Ross.
Everybody get low, everybody gotta hold on to. Every day we gotta grow, finding people you can hold on to. Everybody get low, everybody gotta hold on to. Every day we gotta grow, finding people you can hold on to. But it's time for a word with Sturg. Let's take all the pain, let's take all the hurt. Let's turn it around till the pain doesn't hurt and the world doesn't worry. We all got some problems, we all in a hurry. And now it's time for a word with Sturg. And now it's time for a word with Sturg. I've been hurting too, but I'm flipping the mood. If you deal with depression or just stuck in the blues, we can make it out like we've been stuck in some ways. You can change, elevate where you are. Know it's harder some days, but today you a star. Look in the heart, we all got peace but don't know where to start. Time for some healing, with Sturg it'll start. Look in the heart, look in the mind. Better yourself, you'll be better with time. Don't gotta rush, it's one step at a time. Clearing the mental and freeing the mind. Everybody gotta hold on to. Every day we gotta grow, finding people you can hold on to. Everybody get low, everybody gotta hold on to. Every day we gotta grow, finding people you can hold on to. But it's time for a word with Sturg. Let's take all the pain, let's take all the hurt. Let's turn it around till the pain doesn't hurt and the world doesn't worry. We all got some problems, we all in a hurry. And now it's time for a word with Sturg. And now it's time for a word with Sturg.
All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to A Word with Sturg. I'm your host, Jon Sturgis, and today we're going to talk about an introduction to neuroplasticity. This is something I told you guys we're going to be talking about a lot in this podcast, and realistically, we could talk about it for a long time today, but I'm not going to do that. I don't want to make these episodes too long, but we're just going to get into sort of an intro to it, and then in future episodes, we're going to dive a little bit more into this topic. A lot more, honestly, but to start off, neuroplasticity, by definition, is the brain's capacity to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. The brain continues to grow and evolve in response to life's experiences, and it refers to the ability of the brain to adapt or change over time by creating new neurons and building new networks. Neuroplasticity involves neurons creating new connections and pathways in response to changes in behavior, environment, or even injury. The brain is an incredibly malleable organ, and as we grow and we learn, our experiences sort of multiply, and our brain cells evolve. Now, malleability refers to the ability to be hammered or pressed permanently out of shape without breaking or cracking. And that's where the plasticity comes in, right? Plasticity is the capacity to be shaped, molded, or altered. Now, historically, scientists used to believe that the brain stopped growing after childhood. However, current research contradicts this theory, and it even shows us that the brain continues to evolve and change throughout our lives. And so there's going to be 5 key points we're about to get into next that kind of explain this a little bit. But the first one here is learning and memory, right? So neuroplasticity is crucial for learning and memory. It allows us to acquire new knowledge and skills by forming and strengthening neural connections. Now, part 2 of this is behavioral flexibility. You see, the brain can reorganize its architecture and shift functions to different regions even. This flexibility allows us to adapt to various situations and challenges. Part 3 here is structural remodeling. So neuroplasticity involves reorganizing connections within the brain, and scientists sometimes refer to this process as structural remodeling. Now, part 4 is neurogenesis. So certain brain regions, like the hippocampus, can generate new neurons throughout adult life. And this process is called neurogenesis. The 5th thing here is resilience. So neuroplasticity allows us to bounce back from setbacks and adversity, and it even helps us to develop new mindsets, memories, skills, and abilities as well. So to summarize all of this, neuroplasticity is a powerful concept, a very powerful concept, and it essentially means that our brains are not fixed entities, right? They can change. They're rather dynamic and adaptable organs that continue to grow and they continue to change as we experience life. So Studies in people recovering from a stroke have shown and provided support for neuroplasticity, as some regions of the brain that remain healthy could sometimes end up taking over, at least partially, functions that have been destroyed after a stroke. Patients who suffer from depression and PTSD, right? They tend to have impaired neurogenesis and neuroplasticity, meaning that their brain cells grow more slowly and they're less adaptable. And these structural changes can end up leading to atrophy of various brain regions, including the hippocampus, which is involved in learning and memory, and then the prefrontal cortex, which mediates personality and decision making. Coming from someone who struggled with depression and mental health challenges for a long time, I can definitely relate to all of that, right? So this means that it's more difficult, but it's not impossible to use neuroplasticity to overcome these challenges. And it will take work. It'll definitely take work. I promise you that. Consistent, hard work. But if I can do it, you can do it. And some of you out there may be thinking, I don't need to hear this message, right? And that may be true. However, I do know that big part of making the changes necessary, to shift your life and to shift your outlook and perspective on life involves honesty. And I know a lot of us are afraid to be vulnerable and to have that honesty with ourselves. Like, I know a big part of the reason I used to smoke weed a lot and I used to drink a lot were because I was trying to run from my emotions, right? And every time I didn't want to feel those emotions, all right, let's go get high, let's go drink. I wouldn't really get like drunk like that, but yet and still I was doing those things to sort of repress those feelings and not be honest with myself. And a big part of me getting out of it was, as I stated, I think in the first episode, like when I was forced to sit with my emotions and to be honest with myself about flaws. And a lot of the times you can't maybe learn the lesson as you're going through the experience. But if you take the time afterwards, right, with a clearer mind, removed from the experience, and you reflect, you can learn so much and you can be honest with yourself if you choose to do so. Now, it's been said that brain exercises may be as useful as drugs to treat diseases as severe as schizophrenia. And it's been said that neuroplasticity even exists from the cradle to the grave, right? So from birth to death, basically. And that radical improvements in cognitive functioning, which is anything from how we learn, think, how we perceive, and even remember, are possible even in the elderly. So there's a guy named Michael Mirzanich, and he was a neuroscientist who has been one of the pioneers for neuroplasticity for about roughly over 30 years. So he is the one that made some of these claims that I just spoke about. And his work ended up being impacted by a huge discovery made by David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel in their work with kittens. The experiment involved showing one eye shut and recording the cortical brain maps. Now, cortical maps, for those of you who don't know, I definitely didn't know what they were. Cortical maps are collections, areas of many columns in the brain cortex that have been identified as performing a specific information processing function. This can be texture maps, color maps, contour maps, etc. Now, Hubel and Wiesel, they saw that the portion of the kitten's brain that was associated with the shut eye was not idle as they had expected. Instead, it processed visual information from the open eye. And it was almost as if the brain didn't want to waste any cortical real estate, essentially, and have found a way to sort of rewire itself. So what this ended up doing was it implied that neuroplasticity during the critical period, and to pause real briefly, a critical period it's basically a maturational stage, right, in the lifespan of someone or an organism, during which the nervous system is especially sensitive to certain environmental stimuli. Think when you're a child. Now, it was thought that if this organism doesn't receive the appropriate stimulus during this critical period to learn a given skill or trait, it might be difficult, ultimately less successful, or even impossible to develop certain associated functions later on in your life. And that's where the planting seeds part comes in from the first episode. It's a saying I've heard, like it's much easier to build up a strong child than it is to repair a broken man or woman. And again, even though it's much easier to do it when that person is a child, it's still not impossible to correct that when you're an adult. So neuroplasticity basically debunks that theory. Now, Merzonich argued that neuroplasticity could occur beyond the critical period. He ended up conducting an experiment with a scientist named Clinton Woolsey, which was based on the observation of what occurred in the brain when one peripheral nerve was cut and then ended up being regenerated. So they micromapped the hands of monkey brains before and after cutting a peripheral nerve and sewing the ends back together. What they found was that the hand map in the brain that they expected to be jumbled was actually nearly normal, it turned out. So this ended up being a significant breakthrough, and Merzonich stated that if the brain map could normalize its structure in response to abnormal input, then the prevailing view that we are essentially born with a hardwired system that had to be wrong and it had to be flawed, right? The brain had to be plastic. Merzonich went on to receive the 2016 Kavli Prize in neuroscience for the discovery of mechanisms that allow experience and neural activity to remodel brain function. So, with all that being said, I know a lot of the times in life we say, like, we can't change, right? I can't change. This is just who I am. And to be real with yourself, that's a very, very lazy answer. And maybe not even lazy. It could be in some cases, but some cases you might just be misinformed. We can absolutely change if we want to and if we were willing to put in the work, right? I'm a firm believer in manifestation. And if you can make the choice that you want to make a change, and then you can see that, you can picture it, you can visualize what that may end up looking like, you can set your mind to it and you can manifest it. Not only manifest it, but put in the work to manifest it. Okay? So, neuroplasticity, like I said, man, it's a very, very vast topic. And we're going to cover a lot about it on this podcast. But I just want you guys to know that no matter what you're going through, no matter what trauma you went through, and what kind of stress you went through, what kind of abuse you suffered, what kind of depression you've been living in, you can change anytime that you want to. Neuroplasticity is a very real thing. And, just like I feel like to me, it takes work to stay in the same predicament that you are in and to remain stagnant. That takes work. Now, of course, it also takes work to change those circumstances and those situations and to go after something new and something different and envision being someone else altogether. But it's not impossible whatsoever. And what I want to leave you guys with today is just know that you can do it, right? If I can do it, what I've been through, where I came from, I firmly believe that anybody can do it if they make their mind up to do it. You're not just stuck in your ways. You don't have to be like this, until you die. And again, if it's not something that you need to hear per se, then I guarantee you that there's people in your life that are close to you who could use this message. So thank y'all for taking the time to listen. We're going to talk about this a little more down the road as well, but I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day. I hope y'all stay blessed and keep going on the path to becoming a transitional character.